today. I am so incredibly excited to have this conversation. We are going to be diving into how can residential businesses make the leap to commercial businesses? What does it take for leaders to really cultivate the full sense of who they need to be in order to make that leap? And also, how can we really leverage community? Because frankly, we're seeing communities die off more than ever before, especially with AI companions coming on, and people need each other more than ever. So I am thrilled and honored to be joined with Karina Neff. Karina, thank you so much for joining us. You hold such an incredible resume, which I'll go into in just a moment, but thank you for your time today.
Thank you for inviting me to do this. I feel like we've been friends for years. We just started chatting and I'm like, are we best friends already? I don't know. It feels like
I'm
it.
glad it's mutual. I mean, it's so fun. I was doing a little bit of stalking, as one does, before we joined, and it is so impressive what you've built. It really, really is. And not just what you've built, but also what you've been able to power forward. I think it's so easy to stay in our entrepreneurial lane. So obviously, you've got a really strong tech and data background, but then also with the service cleaning industry that you've been building on your own, both residential, taking it into the commercial space with MGN, and then coming on as the committee chair for ISSA, which is the largest association for, it's not just cleaning businesses, but it's the contractor space whenever it comes to even just facility management. It's like all the touch points of what goes inside of a business. So I'd love to just hear more about you and how did you get to this place today?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so honestly, I think, one of the things that I'm consistently, this era, if you will, feels a lot like gratitude in terms of I've been put in places or situations and I have the pleasure and honor to serve the way that I do, because this industry has given so much to my family. My parents came over to the US in 1989 from Peru, and they started a residential cleaning company. And that residential cleaning company provided an enormous amount of opportunity for my brothers and I. Put us through college. I went to George Mason University. I graduated with a degree in public relations, and my mother asked me to come and help and do some work for her. And so I begrudgingly did so. But I think two really critical components happened for me there. It was the enormous amount of love and gratitude I started to have for this cleaning industry that had given so much, but also this infatuation with technology, right? And so what I also knew very early on is that the residential space in the DC metro area is very saturated. And I also understood, because of the proximity to the federal government, being woman-owned, minority-owned, I knew that the financial gains were incredible, right? And so I was like, this is a no-brainer for us to go into the commercial space. I just remember having like multiple conversations with our customers that were taking hours and hours of my time and just draining for like $150 biweekly. And I'm like, this is not for me. Like, this is not going to work out. So, and to have the same type of resources into the commercial space and have $1 million contracts, $3 million contracts, it just was like, okay, this makes sense. So I ended up starting a commercial cleaning company called MGN, like you mentioned, and I was very blessed with the connections, getting 2 large contracts with the FDA and FBI, respectively with Colliers and Cushman, and then COVID happened. And so I had to get super creative about not only securing new opportunities, but also differentiating myself. And I remember thinking, okay, well, what does everyone want right now in the cleaning space? And it was accountability and transparency, right? Remember, Christina, the CDC at that time had passed out those mandates. You had to clean and disinfect multiple times a day. And so what I did was I created an app that was called a Cleaning and Disinfecting Countdown. And it was very, very simply a countdown to clean. Like, you went into high touch areas like lobbies, fitness centers, etc. And it was just a countdown that said, in 5 minutes, 22 seconds, team member is going to be returning. And so it was huge. And I actually got approached by the president and CEO of Pioneer, which is another DC Metro cleaning company. Huge though, 82 million in revenue, 1,600 employees across 4 states. And Chase basically was like, hey, you're smart. Why don't you come and sell me your company, sell me your app, and join my team and run my tech? And
Wow.
so I had learned to code, right? I'd done it. I had built an app, but I was all self-taught. So to have that opportunity to come into that organization in that way and take over the technology and build a fully integrated service platform, I think again was this place of like gratitude. Like, how am I awarded this opportunity to serve in this way and build technology for the frontline team member? So all to say that, I've been in this space my whole life. The residential really is where I started. Very passionate about helping the companies navigate the differences between residential and commercial. And it's very different because
Yes.
that's a huge misconception that it's the same. It's not, it's very different. The pricing is different. And so
Mm.
now, serving as a chief engagement officer for building service contractors and residential, my mission is really to serve companies and help them navigate this space in a way that allows for profitability, allows for clear scale. And so I'm grateful to have these conversations because I get to just share the cool things that we're doing.
Right. Right. As you're sharing, I was thinking about there's been multiple points of the evolution of
Yeah.
what brought you here today. The willingness to step into the family business, which is
Oh,
a big deal. I remember the first time I started stepping into the family business, and
yeah.
to your word, gratitude, you've mentioned that multiple times. Man, is it so important that we really understand our roots for
Yeah.
multiple reasons. We talk about it, about the evolution of our personal selves and really understanding where we came from. But in terms of the professional sense, if we are, kind of the child of a family-owned business, and a lot of
Yeah.
folks here, this is whether you are a child of a family-owned business or you have kids and you own your family business. This
Right.
is applicable in both regards. There was so much distance between us as kids with the family business growing up. Like, my dad would sometimes take us onto the job sites and it was fun, but in adulthood, I think he never wanted to force it on us. So we were actually
Yeah.
very separated and had no idea what was happening. But in so doing, I also never really got to know him. And as I've gotten more involved, gratitude has been such an anthem in my life where I'm like, wow,
I
look at
love
what
that.
you've done.
Yeah.
Look at what you've done. And I've gotten to know who he is at a much deeper level by knowing what he does. And
Yes.
so I just wanted to make that little comment because it is really important. Like, if we want to strengthen relationships with our children or with our parents, get to know what they do, because that will inevitably show us who they are on so many
Yeah.
levels. So I just wanted to call that out, because then you took that gratitude with you, and it was almost like gratitude was powering you forward to then look at things in a curious manner of especially when COVID hit, well,
Right.
what do people need and want? Rarely are we asking that question, Karina. And so I'd actually like to lean into that aspect of, if we want to get to the next level, what are the questions our customers are asking? What are the fears that they have? How is the industry being changed, especially with AI coming in? What are just some key questions that some of the folks listening to this could be asking about, okay, I want to get to the next level. How do I keep a thumb on the pulse of what people even need to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, like, let me back up a second though. You mentioned something really important to like the relationship that you had with your dad. And I just wanted to unpack that a little bit because I think for kids and for someone that has been in this space with my parents and their company, I think it's very, it's about where you are at personally and how you connect with them. And so for you to be able to see your dad, that's a
Mm,
reflection of where you were at in that moment. And I wonder, like,
mm.
what was the one observation when you finally started to see him, both as a business owner and as a father, and the hybrid of two? Like, what was that one thing that you saw and you're like, wow, like,
Mm.
that's incredible?
Communication.
Really?
Especially because I really dove in 2017. I built their website. And I talked with, and I have this whole process on the marketing side when we start working with businesses where I just dive deep into their data and deep into their customers, their employees, and like all of the facets, who are you, who do you serve, and what do you do? Like
Right.
all three of those aspects. And so in so doing, I got to hear all of their perspectives about my dad.
Yeah.
And that was such Oh man, it was just like such an honor,
Mm,
because how much he made people feel so loved through communication
yeah.
and what a value that was. Because then I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, no matter he's got six kids and
Oh my
business.
gosh.
That's third generation for him. I'm the fourth generation. So he would take our calls anytime, no matter what, throughout the day. He'd even be
Oh
like, "Hi, I
wow.
can't talk. I'll call you back." And we're like, "Okay," he'd still answer.
Yeah.
And so like the communication side was his modality of care,
Yeah.
and so that really transcended
Wow.
both in the family, but then also down into the business. It kind of descended down into the ranks of the way that he really loves people. And so now that I know that, now I know that that's actually, it almost becomes a love language in some ways. The way that people
Yeah.
live in business can actually really show their personal values, as it should, you know.
Yes.
And so that's actually helped me care for him in return by being really intentional to ask questions. And what's cool too is that was never modeled for him. He really developed that. So I love that question in terms of what really stood out. That communication as a hallmark of care was
Yeah.
was what was reflected back when I went and kind of did my homework.
Well, and I think communication, right? A lot of communication is listening. Like
Mm,
you had to listen to him and his words and be able to feel them because
mm,
words have meanings. And especially when you start to ask the right questions and you're in a space where you can absorb them differently as a daughter, I think it's really beautiful to be able to have those moments, not just with him, but also, like you said, understanding those around him and how they are using words to describe him
mm,
and his impact. And
mm.
that's legacy, that's generational legacy. And like that's, I always say this, a good brand, a good company makes you feel something first. That's what it should feel like. It doesn't matter what color at the end of the day, it's how you feel when you interact with that brand. And that seems like, I don't know your dad, but I can feel that you feel something when you're around him or you're communicating with him. And so that's awesome. I hope I get to meet him one day.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so. And Karina, I'm so glad you kind of leaned into this, because before we jumped on here, we were talking about how getting to the next level in leadership is relational. It's
Oh,
understanding
yeah.
how to engage with people.
Yeah.
And we're not taught that other than, in these conversations, or when it is time to level up, we're like, oh, wait a second. Or we're, God forbid, in a rough partnership or relationship, whether it's personal or professional. And it's like, wait, I actually don't know how to do relationships, which constitutes 60 to 70% of our lives.
Yeah.
We don't know how to do that. So this element of communication is so important, and just relationships in general.
So important.
So
Well, and
important.
I think too, one of the things that, I mentioned in terms of technology, right? One of the biggest misconceptions about implementation of technology, adaptation, optimization, I mean, name it, is the emotional intelligence component or the cultural impact. And that means that you can want all the fancy AI things and agents and different platforms, but until you understand culturally what that means from
Mm,
a change management perspective to it's such a big component of it, and to be successful at it you have to take that into consideration. And I've worked with companies now in all different sizes, from a 0 to 1 million in revenue to $350 million in revenue, and that piece of it culturally and understanding the like delicacy that you have to treat these types of changes from emotional intelligence and being respectful of people have been doing things a certain way for many many years, and even if it wasn't right, that's somebody's personal um, ownership component. That's what they feel prideful of. And if you don't understand how to communicate or articulate, to your point, the why behind it, then people often feel very resentful or miss just overlooked, like their opinion wasn't really taken into consideration. So
mm,
that is always something that I've been very vocal about. When you talk about technology,
mm,
it's very important that you understand the emotional intelligence component of it and how it changes a culture
mm.
significantly.
So good. I'm so glad you brought that up, because so often it's like tech and digital transformation way over
Oh,
there,
yeah.
and then
Yeah.
people way over there,
Yeah.
rather than realizing it's so integrated.
Yeah.
We really haven't looked at the business as we should the human being, which is we've got the left hemisphere of the brain and the right hemisphere of the brain. They're both
Right.
the same person. Same
Right.
with the business. Customers are buying off of emotion, and employees are staying for the most part based on emotion, whether it's the
Right.
emotion of your family, I have to provide for them, or the emotion towards the mission, the emotion towards their people. What is actually retaining, much less moving us in the direction of pursuing a business, to your point, is emotion. That's what
Yeah.
constitutes a strong brand to begin with. So
Yeah.
what have you seen that's been most successful as you're bringing digital transformation into businesses? Like, what is kind of that, like, how do you bridge the gap there where there is fear?
I think one of the biggest things is alignment, right? I think understanding stakeholders, and this is one of the things that I've learned. I have been very blessed to surround myself with some of the smartest people in our industry. Like,
Yeah.
the level of business acumen that this specific team has made me smarter, sharper, faster, stronger, like all the things that I remember coming into strategy. And I'm very, not only, I love building decks and I'm very creative, and I in terms of like execution, I feel like that's really where I thrive, if you will. But when it comes to like workflows and SOPs and things like that, I remember being in strategy one day for day one, and one of the CEOs, it was a CFO, he literally grabbed a white paper. He put this huge paper, and he put, this is the problem and this is the solution. Do we all agree? And everybody was like, yeah, yeah. And he was like, okay. He wrote everybody's name and he said, come up here and sign it. And I was like, well, that's
Wow.
weird. And so he was like, now that you've signed it, and it's okay if right now, like, let's unpack it. And he gave everyone a safe space for us to like talk through why we were feeling a little bit, because it was a huge change. He's like, but if you sign that paper, that means that you agree. And so for the remainder of this project, that I'm going to consistently hold you to that, because this is alignment. This is where we started.
Wow.
And so that visual to me, it just fundamentally changed the way that I like incorporated stakeholder alignment and the importance of pointing back to something and saying, like, your word at the end of the day is important. And yes, you can have challenges, but you said that you were going to do something. This is how you're going to do it.
Wow.
And you are a representative of your department. And so you have to rally, you have to come together as far as the greater mission of this huge project. And don't get me wrong, like, there was multiple times in the project that there was doubt, there was conflict, and he kept being like, let me just remind you, you signed this paper. And they're like, okay. And it just had this really symbolic, beautiful strength, like duality of both alignment and empowerment, that I'll never forget it. So that was one of the things. Alignment to me is very, very critical when you talk about these things.
So good. I'm so grateful you said that, and the way that he modeled alignment, because it's something to talk about. There's the principle and the practice of the thing. And a lot of times we're all like, yeah, that sounds great. But then actual implementation, it's like, okay, now I'm lost. To that point, making sure everyone's on board, and not just on board, but giving, you said you mentioned the word safe.
Yeah.
Facilitated the safety in which people could voice the concerns.
Yeah. Well, and that was something that I really appreciated, the candor in which they brought. And you can be candid, but also respectful, right? And so that's something that I think a lot of organizations sometimes struggle with, because you feel like you either quote unquote are subordinate and you don't want to, go against the grain. And it's a lot of, again, being a communication major, mob mentality, right? And thinking like, if the majority is going to want this, I don't want to go against the grain. And this specific organization, they very much cultivated a culture that allows you to be vocal about your disagreements, or vocal about your, maybe not disagreements, but your hesitations, in a way that is honest, respectful, and progressive, which is something very hard. And I'll say that again. Progressive means that you're wanting to communicate that you don't agree, but you're willing to move forward. Because it's one thing to say, I don't like this because of this. And it's another thing to be like, that's not going to work. Like that closed off mentality is just very difficult to say. Hey, let's unpack that. Why don't you like it? What about this? And what about this? And so that is a very, very tricky thing that a lot of companies don't get. And it's been very critical, again, when you talk about technology. The concept of UDIS, let me just back up a little bit. The specific digital transformation project that we've done it stands for Unified Data Integration Strategies. Essentially, a lot of these companies are using a lot of different platforms. So this company was using Salesforce, Adaptive, WinTeam, so many different platforms. And so what we wanted to do is create a single source of truth, connect all the systems, and have them talk to each other, information updates in real time. You can get all these analytics, and then you're in completely different space. But what you had to do is understand the nomenclature of the organization and how data is inputted, and that you're only as strong as your input, right? The output is only as strong as your input, rather. So that component of it was very, very important for us to start, because then it starts to unravel like, oh my gosh, but we don't do it that way. And then people get very defensive. And it's like, we're not attacking you, we're attacking the problem. So don't worry, it's no one's fault. And I think that was something super critical too, is like, it's not a reflection if something's wrong, quote unquote wrong. It's not a reflection of you. It's just the environment. And you have to choose to be offended. And that's something that's also been something that's kind of been ingrained in my brain, is choosing to be offended. If you say to me like, oh, I don't really love your shirt, I can take that and say, man, that's so rude. Or you just don't like my shirt. It's in my power and my control to absorb it or take it, or I can just walk away from it. And that's my choice. And it's helped so much when it comes to leadership. Choosing to be offended has changed the way that I fundamentally approach leadership. It really does.
I'm so grateful for that point. Choice. Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning. He was a psychologist, and in Auschwitz, his wife was taken and put into the gas chamber, and he lost every bit of human freedom. And he said, you can take everything from me, but you cannot take choice. That is, of all things, the greatest of all human freedoms. And it really is. We get to choose the impact other people have on us. And same thing, the impact we have on others, like recognizing. So I'm so glad that you brought up emotional intelligence, because we have spent our entire lives cultivating our IQ. And now we're actually spending a lot of time cultivating the artificial intelligence. I'm like, but then the emotional piece is so important for the bottom line revenue as well as unity, So like you're the very first word for UDIS is unified. It goes beyond the technological side to the people side too.
Yes. Oh yeah, 100%. And I think in this business, having emotional intelligence from a relationship or referral basis is really critical. Like understanding where people are at, what I, again, jumped over from residential to commercial, I consistently put myself in environments where I was uncomfortable at first. I went to BOMA, IRM, IFMA, chamber events. Like I was very shy and I didn't want to go, but I purposely put myself, because I remember thinking, I have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's just what has to happen. And emotionally, being able to absorb someone's energy, number one, and really listen to where they're at to properly serve them. Because I hate selling. I hate sales, because I hate that feeling of bothering someone. But I always approach it from, you have a problem and I'd love to be the solution, but maybe I'm not. And so that's where, when I would have these conversations, emotionally connecting with someone to know, like, how can I genuinely help you? I want to be able to help you because I care about what you're going through, and understanding some cues that most people, I think, often miss when it comes to business, because you're just trained to look for like certain words. And in reality, You just have to connect with a human. You have to understand who they are and what they need. And if a business relationship cultivates, then that's great. But
Mhm.
don't lead with that. Just try to understand where someone's at. Because, you know, you and I talked about this when we first met. A lot of us carry a lot of weight personally and professionally. And you never know what someone's going through. And just to be able to sit with a stranger and just listen to them for
Mhm.
even 5 minutes and not have to like, you just let them be. Just let them be and listen. I promise you, you're going to get a lot of different opportunities. It's not about selling, it's about connecting. It's really about engaging with intentionality, honestly.
Mhm. I mean, it goes back to kind of a full circle to listening as
Yeah.
the modality of communication. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
listening for market changes, listening
Yeah.
to even potential vendor relationships and partner relationships, like listening
Yeah.
to form that connection. Um, and then for honestly, the connection also flows in new products. Like now it's like
Yes.
you're looking for something to plug into, and now it's like, okay, now we've got the connection
Yeah.
because now I'm curating my product offering, services, delivery, whatever it
Yeah.
is that you're creating. You've identified where's there the connection point for us to plug this into. So with residential, you were able to develop something very specific for the commercial side to then have that connection point. And so,
Yes.
but you had to listen. Like that's
Yeah.
where the app came from, was the result of that process. And so I think that when we think about, okay, how do I make the transition from residential to commercial? How do I scale my business? Are we actually taking the time to listen? I
Yeah.
sat with the former president and CEO of Jiffy Lube, who grew Jiffy Lube to what it is today.
Oh, wow.
I said, what's the one thing that you would advise me to do? And he said, I would craft out 8 hours on a regular basis to just listen and be creative and like work on the business, not in the business. Just like look,
Yeah.
observe, and like eliminate all inputs and just be. And then that's where creativity comes. That's where solutions can be found, is in the elimination of the noise of the problem in and of itself, because it could very well be something completely new, outlandish,
Yeah.
that we've never done
Yeah.
before. So
Yes.
so I really love the listening piece, because then it also, to that point, listening to what is coming up for you, your intuition. Like intuition is a very powerful tool
Oh,
if we
yeah.
leverage it.
Oh, yeah. I think that's such a listening. You absorb and listen to things different depending on your mindset. Like
Mm,
when I can listen, but I don't always hear, right? And that's something for me specifically, just to like a little bit of self-awareness. I I my kids will sometimes say, I have two teenagers, right? And so I'll listen to them and they'll say stuff to me. And sometimes I hear what they're saying completely different, especially the boys, because there are certain nuggets in there that they're saying. And it's like, I have to be better about actually hearing them and being present for that moment. And the exact same thing that they could have said, and I'm either between meetings or I'm grabbing coffee, going out the door, or I'm going between like picking one up. It's different. And I think that is a skill in of itself. And sometimes you need to hear the same thing multiple times for it to hit different. It's almost like it goes into your heart in different chambers depending on where you're at. And
wow.
that I think is really, it's been such a blessing and a lot of like aha, because I was raised in an environment where, going back to kind of like generationally, right? My mother worked hours and hours. It was like 18-hour days. Both parents, right? Both parents worked all the time. And I remember thinking, I don't ever want to be like that. Like, I want to be around my kids. I want to go do things. Like, she couldn't go to a lot of things. And I remember having this sort of resentment for her. And now looking back, and the way that I have essentially turned into my mother, no big deal, in the best way. But my God, I mean, it's like the same thing that I've done. And it's now
Mm,
I see it that there's so much gratitude for
wow.
the sacrifice that she did for us. And she consistently does. And I think you said it earlier, right? We show our love in different ways, especially as parents that have been in this space and now being able to engage with a parent at this as an adult and now helping them, you see
Yeah.
them completely different. And I hope that my kids one day will see, me the same way that I see my mother and not hold so much
Chills.
resentment. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's real. It's real.
It's really real. It is. And I think too, to your point of listening, what are our kids saying about us?
Yeah.
Because it's interesting and I'm just kind of musing as you say that. Our value systems change as we get older and as we come to engage with the world more. But how can we bridge the difference of value systems as a kid to the parent level, even though they might come to appreciate what we are doing now later? How do we
Yeah.
still allow for the bridge and using that listening? Honestly, it's a tool, it's a tactic, it's a form for connection. So what does connection look like when there are fundamentally different values, to your point of alignment in the boardroom?
Right.
I think of these analogies in business so much. They transcend every area of
Oh,
life.
yeah.
So like the boardroom, going into the boardroom, it's like the boardroom of the family. Like you've got a
Oh,
new
yeah.
place. The boardroom, even I think of my emotional intelligence, intellectual intelligence, physical intelligence. Our body
Yeah.
keeps score. That's a title
Yeah.
of a book around the data that our body stores. Spiritual intelligence. Like I need to actually activate all of those and bring those into the boardroom and sit and listen. Like, all right, how am I doing?
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
actually rising? Because if we're not rising to the level that we need to in order to take our business to the next level, well, then the business actually might grow, but we're down here.
Right.
And we haven't cultivated ourselves to come up here. And
Right.
often in order for the business to it follows our own growth. And so
Right.
do our kids. And so I just love that point of, it just made me muse around how do we make sure that there's still connection, even if there's not alignment of values.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I wish I knew the answer, honestly. I think I just try very hard to be honest about my personal journey with my kids because I think that's something, again, being raised in a Hispanic home, our feelings really weren't discussed and our mental health was not either. And so that was something that we never had any sort of conflict resolution, and it was never a child could be upset at the parent. It just didn't exist. And so I try very hard to honor my kids' feelings and let them be mad, let them be disappointed, but also share with them where I'm at and be honest about my challenges physically, emotionally, mentally, because the more that they have a place, because, and this is so like misery loves company, right? Like, I mean, for them to see me also struggling or stressed, and they're also having the same challenges, they're 9 out of 10 times they don't tell me, but just having them see like, okay, mom's also dealing with something similar allows them to feel some sort of connection to me, I think.
Good.
And also, this world is hard. It's very hard. And it's also very demanding of your intellect and your emotional connection consistently. Like you are expected to operate, to your point earlier, at a level 10 all the time. You've got to do everything at 10. And so that is very, very draining, especially for a child. And I have one. So Ryan is junior. He's going into his senior year. Junior year is incredibly difficult, and he's consistently studying, and just the bridge between a child and now an adult, he's there, and he's feeling the enormous amount of pressure to pick a college and get into said college, and now driving and making sure he still has his grades up, and it's a lot. And so I want to be able to provide a place for him that he knows that it is hard. What you're going through is hard, and you're expected to be all the time at your best. And some days you're not going to be, and it's okay. You can have a bad day. And it's just, I always say this, the mistakes don't define you. It's how you react to the mistakes that do. And so anyone can have an off day, just recharge. I had so many of those days where I'm like, I just need a reset button. please.
Mm.
So
So good. The listening piece, I feel like you just blended, or rather in addition to it, which is sometimes it actually facilitates the listening to take place when we go first, when we
yeah,
actually share first how we're doing, and then they feel safe. And so the goal is safety in so many
yes,
ways, like safety for innovation, because if
yeah,
people don't feel safe to share their opinions, to share their ideas, then they're probably not going to share, and then innovation actually gets hindered. One of our
right.
clients is a psychologist, and he talks about that a good bit, like psychological safety in the workplace,
Oh
psychological
yeah,
safety at home, and where you can bring conflicting ideas and not get shut down. And you can bring
right.
creative ideas and not get shut down. And you can also say things that you're kind of upset about. So long as there's I don't the word boundaries I don't love in this context, but so long as there's almost like rules of engagement. Like
Oh,
I
I love that.
the boardroom, whether it's a boardroom with our family or the boardroom with our clients, I think of that as we're entering into the arena, like Theodore
Yeah,
Roosevelt talks about. You know,
yeah,
we're entering
yeah,
the arena. And frankly, I do this with my partner. It's like, what are the rules of engagement when we're
yeah,
entering into the arena? What does respect look like while speaking the truth? What does it
right.
look like to offer creative ideas and then not take it personally when
Yeah,
they're actually not the best ideas? They're creative,
yeah,
but not what we're going to do.
yeah,
What
yeah.
does the rules of engagement look like? And I think for so many businesses that I've engaged with, I found that actually they talk about values, the principle of the values, but not the practice of the values.
Oh yeah.
Like to
Wow.
really implement these values and live them out in practical application.
Oh yeah. I mean, talk about safe. So I think safety to be vocal about your ideas also comes with the understanding that being passive aggressive and silence in a lot of ways has so much erosion to it. Like it just creates so much toxicity, in my opinion. That's where I always try to start the conversation with there's definitely some things that I may not like, but may not like that you say, but at least say them so you don't hold on to it. And then it comes out in a different aggressive way, because that does more harm
Mm,
than anything else. Because then what ends up happening is that little passive aggressive seed gets planted in that soil. And then every single word or every other thought or comment, it just cultivates that little seed of passive aggressiveness. And then it sprouts up for you in moments that you may
yeah,
not really want to have come up.
yeah.
And so I would rather tell me, Karina, I don't like that idea. And
Mm,
I'm pissed off that you said that, than for you not to say it and it come out in a different way. And
mm,
so that I can handle. I think the safety that we create in like you said, in an organization is paramount to the success of long-term adaptation. Like it's very critical, and also consistency of that safe space, because you can lose that safety in yeah, it's crazy. You're having a one bad moment where you say something and it's so difficult to get that back.
mm.
And so I've always tried really hard, and I'm not great. It's not like I do it perfectly, but I try very hard to center myself when I feel like my face is getting hurt and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm about to. And I'm
Thank
like, no,
you.
yeah. And those that know me best know, like, when because I'm like, okay. And that's my way of like, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm gonna let them finish. And I like fundamentally disagree with what you're saying, but no. And so it is a challenge, but I always want to make sure that I'm respectful and that I honor people's safe space, and they can tell me whatever it is they're feeling in a way that would allow them to feel release, because that ultimately is what we want. We want people to feel release and safe. And vulnerability, this is a Brene Brown quote. Vulnerability is the greatest, what is it? The pathway to like creativity or something. Like, you can only be creative if you are in fact vulnerable. And I think that's one of the things I've also learned is being okay with making mistakes and vulnerable and letting people in. And I learned that at Pioneer. There was a lot of moments where I was wrong. I was wrong. I was out of line. And instead of just being stubborn and saying like, no, I was like, no, I made a mistake and I was out of line. And so Heat Chase taught me a lot about growth, and what ended up happening was cultivating a place where vulnerability could lead into innovation and incredible things. Like, because we were so honest and so committed to being true to the organization, and ultimately, or synergistically, true to ourselves, it allowed us to create the most beautiful things, because there were no inhibitions. Like, we just felt an enormous amount of love for the organization and the people that we were serving, that it just became so incredibly powerful. I mean, the platform itself was called Cora, which is short for Corazon. It was the digital heartbeat of our organization. So we poured our heart into it. And it was a reflection of just the beauty that happens when you really are connected,
right,
and you can be vulnerable with each other.
And that vulnerability, I'm so grateful you brought that up. I love that you quoted Brene Brown.
Yeah, botched it, but it's okay.
I viewed emotions as weakness for the majority of my life. I really shamed myself, and now actually not really other people, but I shamed myself anytime I felt emotions and then expressed them. It was like, here I go, being weak again, rather than recognizing that truly is the pathway to get to innovation and get to that connection, because connection it's almost the pathway. It's like hand in hand with creativity, you know, and then the result is whatever it is, whether it's in the business or the personal, but those aspects of being creative and creating new solutions, because our ability to create new solutions, not just in our business, but also our family. If we grew up where something was modeled for us that was really unhealthy, we actually have to create something new. We have to create new programs, new patterns of thinking and of being, in order for the doing to then be different and have different outcomes. The same in business, you know, it's these very similar, again, principles. So I love that you talked about vulnerability, because it really is so important. And if you don't have, I flew to Colombia last year to work with a team and talk about these things, like how do we actually strengthen your ability to engage with each other, and basically have a fundamental baseline respect for who each other is. But if you don't understand why and how you operate, what motivates you, your idiosyncrasies, it's really hard to have curiosity be in that boardroom rather than judgment. And so once we kind of start to really understand who the other people are, that's where, you know, when we're talking about getting to that next level in business, especially if we want to do something as big as, okay, we're moving not just from, but we're adding commercial in. It's like, man, a whole new business.
Oh, yeah.
And so we have to have that, man, we're better together. We have to have that mindset and that trust to be partnered together. So I just love that you brought that vulnerability piece in, because that's so critical in order to grow and solidify trust.
No, 100%. So ironic that my upbringing, I was never allowed to show emotion. Like I just, not that I wasn't allowed, but just there was no time for the emotion to present itself. And crying was seen as a form of fear or failure or weakness. And so I have this thing that still to this day, I have a very hard time crying because it feels that way. And it's the reason why I say it's ironic is because as a culture, we're very expressive and we're very emotional, but yet we don't want to talk about the emotions. We just we can be loud and we can be angry, we can be sad. We cannot talk about that. And that was something that I generally struggled with, because I didn't know how to your point, be vulnerable with the emotions and then let them. I learned this from one of my friends. When you're feeling an emotion, walk through the emotional tunnel. Don't let it stop. Just walk through it. And that was something that took me a very long time to do, because before I was taught that you cannot feel those feelings. You have to shut them down. So if I felt anger or sadness or fear, it was, no, I cannot feel that. And now I'm like, no, let me just feel that sadness, that anger, that disappointment. Let it just come out through the tunnel and let it go,
Yeah.
because it's warranted. Let it just go and get through it. And I think that that type of evolution of feeling has allowed me to even curate a even more vulnerable place mentally, creatively, that has just challenged me in ways that I didn't honestly expect, but I welcome, honestly.
I love that you talk about the emotional tunnel, because if we don't move through it, we get stuck in it. And that's
Yeah.
where, to your analogy earlier, it gets planted. That
Yeah.
passive aggressiveness gets planted. James Allen wrote this book called As a Man Thinketh. And it talks about our minds being a garden. And everything that we think about is, we're tending to something and sowing something. And so if we don't, and letting it out speaks again to the arena of like, okay, what are rules of engagement for what letting it out looks like? But man, I just love that you brought that up, Karina, because the definition of emotional intelligence, there's like two parts of it. The first part is the ability to be aware of, understand, and express one's emotions. And then the ability to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and with empathy. So we actually can't do the latter half until we really can do the first one. Like we can do it messy and do it, in some ways, but man, our key responsibility as leaders is to manage ourselves and to get ourselves in a good place and make sure that, all right, am I actually moving through and letting things go and allowing for this to be kind of a clean start every day? Or am I taking the past with me into the present? And then that colors and projects not just here on the present, but also into the future.
Right.
And it prevents innovation.
100%. I think how you show up as a leader has obvious rippling effects, but you cannot save or lead if you're drowning, and you have to come right. Like I just, there's nothing you can do if you're not in a place where it just changes your mindset. And I will find myself sometimes, like, I try to do one-on-ones with my team, and we do huddles every week. And so because we are operating at a million miles an hour, they'll tell me like, oh, I'm sorry, I know you're busy. And I'm like, no, I'm not busy for you. I want you to feel, because that energy that they're feeling is obviously a reflection of my energy. And I don't want anyone to ever feel like they have to rush through a one-on-one. Like, that is precious time for me to connect with them. And if they feel like their thoughts, their projects, their deliverable is not important enough for me to stay grounded and present in that moment, then I'm doing them a disservice. It's constantly something that I'm like, I'm not going to look at the email and no text, like, just go ahead and tell them. And they're like, it's okay, we can get off. I'm like, no, it's not okay. I will never cancel a one-on-one with you. If you need to cancel it, that's different, but I will never cancel, because I remember what it was like when my boss would cancel the one-on-ones with me, and I looked forward to it all week. And just to share a project, and then you almost feel a little silly because you're like, I feel like a kid that I got disappointed that my dad didn't show up, right? But like, that's what it feels like, because you're so excited to talk, to have that one-on-one connection, because ultimately you feel like they're pouring into you and helping you grow. And when you don't get that thirst quenched, it leaves you feeling a sense of detachment and feels very isolating. So I never want anyone to feel like that, and I never want them to feel like they were not as important as any meeting or any pitch or anything that I do. Like, their time and their efforts are just as valuable as mine, if not more, to be quite honest.
So good. Karina, thank you so much. I feel like, man, where there's so many good nuggets in this conversation. I'd love to know, what's one thing I haven't asked you that you're like, man, they have to know this to get to the next level what you did with your business is so remarkable
Thank you.
in front of the commercial space. And, I think that both in terms of that addition and growth trajectory, but also your willingness to go into those rooms and your willingness to embrace discomfort. So both of those, if we want to get to the next level, embrace discomfort, and also cultivate the power of listening and first. What else?
Yeah, I mean, those are two really good ones. I think one of the things that I failed a lot of times. Like that's something that we only see the success as an audience or as a community. We never talk about the failure. We never talk about the struggles, the tears that there's so many things that I went through. I couldn't make payroll. I was struggling to like pay my mortgage. Like there were so many times where I really was in a bad financial situation. And I will tell you, I think that's one thing that if anyone is listening to this and can take anything is that you're not alone. Like we've all been there in those moments. And I promise you're going to get through it. You are going to get through it. And if you need anything, just reach out to your network, reach out to, anyone that has the ability to, you just listen too. Sometimes you can already know the solution. You just need someone to listen and understand how heavy it is. Because as business owners, that's one thing that I remember feeling so happy to relinquish that level of weight on my shoulders. To me, it was really deteriorating. Like I couldn't carry that anymore because
Yeah.
I felt like the responsibility of all of these families, and my
Mhm.
mom had done it for so many years that I don't know how she did it, because that level of um, just weight, it was too much for me to bear. Like it was too much, because it's one thing to want to be successful for yourself, but it's another thing to have the financial and generational dependency or impact of cultures. Like there was so many companies, and I will tell you, if you take anything from this, is please know that I've failed multiple times. And if you're in a moment right now where you feel like you're stuck, you don't know where to go, how to proceed, just reach out. I'm happy to walk you through what's worked for me, and I'm happy to share how the millions of mistakes that I've made so you can feel better about yourself. But I promise it gets better. I promise you'll see the other side. There is hope. You just have to take it one day, 1 hour, 1 minute at a time, and it will get better. I promise.
Thank you. What a beautiful way to end this episode. Y'all, we need each other. We need each other more than ever. Karina Neff, how can people find out about you, learn about you, follow you?
LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. Please let me know. We would love to connect with cleaning companies or anyone really. If you need any help or resources, still very connected to the DC area, even though, I serve as the for the building service contractor and residential community at ISSA, but happy to help in any way. I love the community and I love being able to point people in the right direction and give them resources. So follow me on LinkedIn and ask all the questions. I'm happy to answer all your questions. All
Y'all,
the things.
thank you so much. Y'all, thank you so much for joining. Karina, thank you for your
Of
time.
course.
So appreciate you, my friend.
Thank
Y'all, I
you.
will see you on